When looking at Batman artists, there's a ton of legendary names that stand out throughout the character's creation. But when tracing back to the origins of Batman artists, it's a very tricky subject, as the comics would lead you to believe that co-creator Bob Kane was the artist for Batman's golden age and beginnings. However, it's pretty well documented that Kane had ghost artists and in many ways was a fraud. But this video isn't about Bob Kane and how much of a sleazeball he was. Instead, we'll be highlighting the true superstar of the golden age of Batman in the late 40s and 50s. And that's none other than Richard W. Sprang, also known as Dick Sprang. So let's deep dive into Dick Sprang's Batman and debut this series with a bang and ask the question, can they Batman? The series where I analyze artists that draw the famous Caped Crusader and whether they've been drawing him for years or draw him for fun, I let you know whether or not I think they can Batman. Sprang was born 1915 in Fremont, Ohio, and would spend the early 1930s working on the newspaper. In 1936, he would move to New York City, and from 36 to the early 40s, he'd work as a freelance artist for pulp magazines. In 1941, Sprang would submit some samples to DC Comics, and he would land a job on the Caped Crusader himself. Due to some delays, Sprang wouldn't actually have any Batman work published until August of 1943 with his cover from Batman issue 18. And from there, Sprang would work on the character of Batman pretty consistently till about the early 1960s. When it comes to Sprang's Batman appearance, he is hands down one of the most recognizable. The big chest build with the perfect square jawline are what dominated Batman comics for over 2 decades. By the mid-1940s and definitely by the 1950s, Batman had gone from the dark pulp aesthetic to a brighter and more dynamic form of storytelling, which is a perfect match when it comes to Sprang's artwork. His style is all around a good time, focusing on bold and clean designs that excited readers both back then and even now. Iconic splash pages like this explode with creativity and were very ahead of its time. It's a fun barrage with super neat details like this kick-ass splash page Sprang did showing off the Batcave. But going back to Batman specifically, the blue and gray look is arguably Batman's most famous look. And Sprang was not only one of the first people to push this iconic style and costume, but definitely the most popular version of the blue and gray. His Batman is one that anyone could identify out of any lineup, and his influence would go as far as to current Batman comics. Sprang is also a king with expressions. Whether it's his Batman or his Joker, the exaggerated facial expressions of Sprang are fun and iconic, making it very much his own. And sure, Sprang didn't have intuitive or crazy panel spreads, much like other artists at the time, but he would really shine through with his concepts and creativity with character work. Sprang would be responsible for co-creating Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, an alien from the planet Zur-En-Arrh, and what might seem like a silly idea, because it is, it would prove to be a relevant plot point in future decades in other runs. He'd also co-create Firefly, albeit it's not the Firefly most current fans are used to seeing. Sprang would just always have great ideas, like his redesign for the Batmobile, taking it from a basic looking 40s car to a more personalized version that would undoubtedly leave an impact to the Batman mythos. But possibly his biggest contribution to the Batman mythos is the creation and design of the Riddler, one of the Caped Crusader's most iconic rogues. Sprang's concept design is definitely the character's most iconic look and would even make its way to the big screen years after his creation. It really shows how great Sprang's character work is, and not just for the character of Batman, but for the overall cast and the world of the character. His designs are perfectly articulated, and he knows how to add a special flair to each rogue member. I personally love his take on Two-Face with detailed pieces that truly capture that split face design. Once again, it's a character that has their most iconic look thanks to Dick Sprang. It's this solidified look that is very distinct to this early era of Batman. And sure, when it came to storytelling, the concepts were very silly back then, but no one could execute a silly concept better than Dick Sprang. His covers, much like other artists at the time, focused on almost a clickbait type of storytelling, really trying to sell the reader with a bizarre concept. Sprang would also work on World's Finest, so he'd get to draw Batman and Robin teaming up with the Man of Steel, Superman, and the energy would just pop off the page. Sprang would really pave the way for a lot of Batman artists, and just in general, Batman. His influence not only stretches through the comics, but also through TV shows, and as you can even see, toys of today. Overall, even though fans typically like a more serious and dark Batman, this silly era of comics is the foundation of what comics would come to be. And when looking at it in a visual storytelling aspect for the Batman character, no one during this era was doing it quite as good as Dick Sprang, Batman's first superstar artist. But what do you guys think of Dick Sprang? You've definitely recognized his artwork even if you don't know the name. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe for more.